My name is Leif Elggren. My task is to guide you through a myriad of voices found on this CD and to take you on a journey which, owing to technological advances, is peculiar to this century. I speak of the domestication of electricity, the arrival of the tape recorder, and the development of sensitive measuring devices. But despite these advances, EVP remains an unsolved 20th century mystery. Perhaps in the 21st we'll find the solution. The following collection of voices, samples and recordings have been provided by the British EVP researcher Mr. Raymond Cass. Many of these recordings were made using a standard tape recorder with a built-in microphone, as explained in Raymond's introduction. Therefore, it should be added that much of the material presented here is of a low quality. This is purely due to the methods of recording that were obtainable to Mr. Cass during the time of his research. It should also be noted that none of these samples have been altered or tampered with in any way other than to master the recordings for this CD. Because many of the examples are so small, they have been repeated 3 times, so that the listener may examine them more closely, as is the tradition with the general presentation of EVP voices. At each section of the CD, there will be a brief explanation of the type and origin of the samples presented, giving an account of how the voices were obtained. The following introduction is by Raymond Cass himself, explaining the phenomena of EVP and its possible origins.
Voices of unknown origin appearing on radio frequencies were first noticed in Scandinavia by the military in the 30s and were put down at the time to secret Nazi transmitters. But the voices spoke in unknown and mixed tongues, and after the war, no records of secret Nazi transmissions ever came to light. The voices didn't stop after the war, but their rapidity and their transient nature precluded study. That is, until the tape recorder came into common usage in the 50s. A group of radio hams in Chicago studied the strange transmissions, male and female voices speaking in polyglot mode and lyrical tones, but it was not until 1959 that a Russian-born Swedish citizen, radio and TV producer and filmmaker Frederic noticed intrusions on tape and commenced his own systematic study. A disturbing fact soon emerged. The voices zeroed in onto the Swede, addressing him by name, revealing a knowledge of his thoughts and actions, and claiming to be the voices of deceased friends and acquaintances. The news spread rapidly, and soon experimenters and scientists all over the world were attempting to duplicate Jurgensen's work. Prominent among them was the Latvian psychologist Konstantin Raudive. The effect on parapsychologists was traumatic. Accustomed to investigating the blind forces of the poltergeist and endless and somewhat boring card and dice-guessing experiments, they were confronted at once with living voices, which answered back. Speech being a mark of intelligence and a highly structured artifact. Taken by surprise, the British parapsychologists, without conducting experiments, rejected the objectivity of the voices, explaining them as breakthrough from taxis, police messages, or simply mechanical noises in the tape recorder. But their European counterparts were more cautious, and possibly with greater technical resources, they soon found out that they were indeed confronted with voices of unknown origin on tape, voices which were human-like, but exhibiting odd characteristics, like constructing a sentence from the elements of one or more languages, impinging on a regular broadcast, and by a strange process of metamorphosis, twisting the words of the speaker to suit their purposes and messages. The utterances were strangely lyrical and musical, but compressed and truncated. Rigorous economy with words, and the free use of coined words was common, the so-called neologisms. But like all paranormal phenomena, the voices came and went unpredictably. If the investigator probed too closely as to their source, it seemed as though they broke contact and left him stranded. This is known as the decline effect in psychical research. It is as though there are barriers and constraints against full contact and confrontation. It may be argued that a study of the voices on tape of non-human origin contributes nothing to our survival biologically, and that our sensory apparatus needs to be closely focused on material affairs to ensure our economic and planetary survival. The voices may be a mutant development of some remote corner of the subconscious mind, or a transient byproduct of the electromagnetic pollution which now rings our planet and presses outward into space. Or then again, the voices may herald the first tentative contact with intelligences from a parallel world, who, occasionally, when conditions are right, and at the interface between two separate realities, reach out to us, manipulating electronic apparatus and energies in ways at present unknown to us, studying our languages, probing our minds, presenting us in many cases with what we want to hear, or what they imagine we expect to hear. Between 1973 and 1977, I was situated in a so-called window area, an area in a city with a high electromagnetic flux. Nearby, a mass X-ray center, a radio hotspot, and utilizing an ordinary receiver tuned to the aircraft band, I was able to record, when atmospheric conditions were favorable, male and female voices of unknown origin, which occasionally addressed me by name. It has also been suggested that the radio receiver in use suffered from RF breakthrough, allowing foreign material to bypass the tuned circuits. All in all, a highly complex combination of factors, which unfortunately changed, but then allowed brief contact with another reality. That contact has now ceased, but then my attention is directed once more to mundane activities, my profession, politics and science, hi-fi, and wine, women, and song. No wonder a silvery female voice breaking through onto the airband sang in German, "We're from another world, but you've cut us out." Maybe one day the contact will be renewed, but let there be no mistake. The validity and objectivity of the paranormal voices doesn't depend on Jurgensen, Konstantin Raudive, or myself, for there are now hundreds of voice experimenters worldwide, and the mysterious voices have been recorded from Siberia to Scunthorpe, and are stored in digital form in databanks in the West and in the Soviet Union. As I prepare this tape, some of my own examples are being processed at a U.S. Air Force base in Texas, and have been fed into a computer of the Western Alliance in the Ruhr. We stand at the threshold of new discoveries, and a breakthrough may occur at any time. Some say we are not yet ready for the contact. Worldwide presentation of Jurgensen's results on 2 LP records has been cancelled. No reasons given. So do we keep our senses focused on terrestrial affairs, the energy crisis, economic growth, commerce and finance, war and armaments? Or is that pathway leading to ultimate disaster? Or will the silvery voices open our awareness to other realities and a wider universe?
The following set of voice samples are classed as polyglot. These particular extracts use an unusual sentence structure and a combination of 2 or more languages. Often the voice has been found to communicate using combinations of English, German, Latvian and other languages. Sometimes using neologisms or made-up words, and often changes in pitch. This seems to be a recurring factor of EVP.
Industriel du Paese avec les stations balnéaires de la Liepina et du Coca. Industriel du Paese avec les stations balnéaires de la Liepina et du Coca. Industriel du Paese avec les stations balnéaires de la Liepina et du Coca. Наряду с такими относительно невинными наряду с такими относительно невинными наряду с такими относительно невинными наряду с такими относительно невинными
Le comte Soldart. Le comte Soldart. Le comte Soldart.
Untitled. 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 Money, like Dawson position, measure. Money, like Dawson position, measure. Money, like Dawson position, measure. Очень большой друг. Очень большой друг. Очень большой друг.
Нью-Йорк Дели Ньюс, Success. Нью-Йорк Дели Ньюс, Success. Нью-Йорк Дели Ньюс, Success.
This second set of voice samples shows the way in which voices have been heard breaking into public service broadcasts, for example, breaking across the aircraft band. Often the researcher, as in this case, will leave the radio and recorder switched on for long periods of time. This is done in an attempt to capture voices that break in unexpectedly into radio frequencies and transmissions. The first example we hear involves a telephone conversation between Raymond and his wife, during which a voice breaks in over the radio, which is operating in the same room.
Oh, hi. Yeah. I think, yeah. Well, he said together and went, yeah.
Oui, je sais, c'est un miracle. Oui, je sais, c'est un miracle. Oui, je sais, c'est un miracle.
Going 847, check Dogger 270, Blue Dove at 44. Going 847, check Dogger 270, Blue Dove at 44. Going 847, check Dogger 270, Blue Dove at 44.
Voyage, on promet toujours aux enfants bien.
Producerar när sömnen går ut.
Avec moi tu le feras. Voyage, on promet toujours aux enfants enfants bien.
Produceren är 500 000.
Pas avec moi, tu le feras. Voyage, on promet toujours aux enfants bien.
Produceren är 500 000.
Pas avec moi, tu le feras.
Jesus Christus, laudetur Jesus Christus. Jesus Christus, laudetur Jesus Christus. Jesus Christus, laudetur Jesus Christus.
Ich hab die richtige Frequenz, wie das
Wir hören deine Stimme.
Ich hab die richtige Frequenz, wie das
Wir hören deine Stimme.
Ich hab die richtige Frequenz, wie das
Wir hören deine Stimme.
Menschen staat voorop die zijn graadmaal. Menschen staat voorop die zijn graadmaal. Menschen staat voorop die zijn graadmaal.
Ma quello che è fatto. Ma quello che è fatto. Ma quello che è fatto.
A strange phenomena of EVP is the way in which messages appear using a singing voice. In these cases, the singer contacts the researcher, often using the same structure as in the polyglot voices, only the voice appears to be in a form of song. This last set of examples in this section is probably the most startling. We can hear the experimentator attempting to communicate with the speaker and in fact getting a direct response as though by two-way radio. Many of the voices we have heard leave very little trace of their origins. Many questions still remain as to whether they are actually from the afterlife or just stray radio or other transmissions.
If you'd like to speak a bit closer into it, I don't know whether you think of anything to say.
I don't know. Good afternoon, or
That's what something silly.
It
sounds a bit daft, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But you get used to that, you know, speaking into thin air. And you see, that's the background.
Yeah.
That's a little... We have to see what that is, you see.
Yeah. Is that on the aircraft?
Yes, yes. That's not an aircraft pilot. They speak English.
Yeah.
All aircraft all aircraft pilots speak English.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody on the other side. Can you break through? And can the... This is Raymond and Ingrid. It's now nearly 6 o'clock on the 23rd of August 1976, and we do invite our friends, many of our friends who have communicated before, to speak to us on this channel of communication, to speak to us, to send their messages. We shall transcribe your voices, and if they're suitable, we'll publish them. So we're very happy to receive your voices, your singing, your music, and we especially welcome Constantine Raudive and his friend. Thank you. We'll have to decipher that.
We received a voice yesterday of Mrs. Greenlees calling the name of her cat, Oliver, and we thank her for that, and we hope she can speak again and come again and tell us how she is. That. I hope is working tonight.
We're still here. We're packing up now to go back to Bridlington, And if there's someone here who is with us,
Der einzige Diebstahl, den man begrüßt.
if there's someone listening to us, watching us, well, we welcome them and we ask them to put their comments on tape.
Philip Larkin, where are you? Can you respond? Have you anything to say to your friends? Dawson. The Heartless? Are you still tramping? I tried to convey to you, before you died, an indication of survival after death. But you didn't take my frequency. But you didn't.
On the 16th of July, 1976, this is Raymond and Ingrid. Thank you. Thank you. We'll have to decipher that, but we thank you for answering us.
Has anyone any comment to make on the air crash at Lockerbie? Was it a bomb? Was it metal failure? Has anyone any comment to make?
The language combinations and unusual sentence structures sometimes suggest that the speaker either has little time to communicate or has no concise knowledge of the used languages. The following extract explores the potential origin of a particular collection of voices that were obtained by the EVP researcher Raymond Cass. The extract contains commentary by Raymond himself about the possibility that the voices are in some way attempts at communication by an extraterrestrial force or intelligence.
This is Raymond Cass. I've called this section of the tape Alien Voices because the utterances have a harsh, robotic and rather stern character. There is no longer disputing the fact that the voices exist objectively on tape, but their origin is still obscure. My voices are clear and dramatic, but worldwide experimenters are picking up thousands of voices, many purporting to be the voices of the dead. I have many of these, plus one outstanding example of an entity still in a body of flesh. Listening to the voices to follow, one has an immediate impression of an alien intervention, as though their advanced technology was contributing to the opening of a window between two existences. The Scottish astronomer Duncan Loonan postulated the existence of alien probes already parked in the solar system and lying dormant in waiting until the turn of the century, when terrestrial radio transmissions would activate their sensors. And this alerted the alien intelligence to the emergence of earthly beings, ourselves, of rather belligerent and warlike character. A leading American scientist, Professor Deardorff, rejected the concept of an unbridgeable gulf between the stars and the Earth, and he also postulated the concept of aliens already in our system, and probing and contacting selected individuals in tentative forays as a prelude to a more general contact, while seeking to disarm governments and authorities who would like to suppress the contact. The controversy still raging over the Roswell incident and the almost certain cover-up by governments is an indication of the explosive character of these alien interventions. Here's a harsh voice in answer to an unspoken query of mine regarding a long negative period in which no voices were received for several months. "Dead machines," proclaims a voice. Were the parked probes in need of a battery recharge? Were they ticking away inactively, pending a new phase as part of a revised alien strategy? This male voice is unequivocal, decisive, unearthly. Here it is.
Dead machine. Dead machine. Dead machine.
Addressing a guttural and rather harsh voice, I asked for their area of origin. The reply came in polyglot, a mixture of languages. Doch, that's German for certainly, or yes. Recording der Kosmosiamons. That's recording the Kosmosiamons. Yes, you're recording a cosmic race. Note recording instead of recording, and der Kosmosiamons, which should be die Kosmosiamons, plural. So here we have a hint that the voices, mysterious voices, may not be of terrestrial origin.
Non-recording der Kosmosiamons. Non-recording der Kosmosiamons. Non-recording der Kosmosiamons.
A slightly wacky voice shouts in polyglot, "We are Adlers, we're eagles." Les message, French and English, pass auf, pay attention, das tut the weather, is affected by the weather. That's a potpourri, a polyglot voice, possibly trying to tell us that the transmissions may be affected by the weather, by geophysical conditions or geological or meteorological conditions. After the passage of a few years, the paranormal voices became more structured and less weird. The voices indicated from the beginning that they had the technological means to monitor us in our daily lives, to listen to our conversations, and even to zero in into our environment and observe us, and even record material from that. Here's a voice which seems to suggest even that. It's superimposed on a public service broadcast, which might, as far as I know, be gas board or water board, and it's a cultured English voice claiming we can see Edith by radio. Edith is my wife, who sometimes takes part in the experiments. We can see Edith by radio, a cultured English voice.
BBC English by radio. BBC English by radio.
They're both showing
BBC English by radio.
They're both showing
BBC English by radio.
Probably referring to me, here's a voice saying he'll be ready to be a hero speaker. He'll be ready to be a hero speaker, indicating that I would overcome inhibitions and release some of my voices to a wider public.
Товарищи, Брежнева, печать. Товарищи Брежнева, печать. Товарищи Брежнева, печать.
Visiteur.
Товарищи Брежнева, печать.
Visiteur.
That last voice apparently says Hoch Visitor, exalted visitor, maybe from another planet.
Visiteur. Visiteur.
Here's rather a vain fellow. He calls himself the Herzog Biris, the Duke of Biris, whoever and wherever that may be.
Herzog Biris. Herzog Biris.
The next voice proved to be prophetic. It came across in 1975 and it was played on tapes in 2 Japanese universities. It was a clear warning about the misuse of nerve gas. The voice went on to say that there was an evil struggle in the making. At that time, the nuclear threat was uppermost in the minds of politicians and in the minds of the public. But the voice was aware of a more sinister and silent threat, that of nerve gas, or nerve gases and chemical warfare, culminating more recently in the attack on the Japanese subway. Here the same entity claims that he's mono-poly-ASEAN, a mono-poly-Asian. This is, of course, a contradiction in terms.
Monopoly-ASEAN. Monopoly-ASEAN.
Now an intriguing female voice. Here is Astauda. That's a nice New Age name. And a guttural male voice claiming, we originate on a planet, something something travel. I don't quite get this one, needs an acute ear. An entity obviously unused to our atmospheric conditions complains, who shall ever be in this pressure? Who shall ever be in this pressure?
Who shall ever be in this pressure?
A more pleasant female addresses me, this is in the early 70s. Raymond C. Wir haben Schallplatten. Raymond C. We have recording apparatus, or we have LPs, gramophone records. This is a 70s concept. No mention here of cassettes or CDs. Group of mysterious females practicing an odd kind of English seem to be training someone in one of our languages, a person who seems a little distressed. Autocratic sounding feminists here.
Uno, O, H, N, E, significa sí, y M, Uno, O, H, N, E, significa sí, y M,
Here, a male entity announces his name. Here is Der Sisternatus. Der Sisternatus is the German definite article, the masculine. Here is Der Sisternatus, but the name sounds Latin. Another guttural sounding entity complains, "They'll never believe us till conquest of English." They'll never believe us till conquest of English. And I think that's probably true, and that's about all we have time for at the moment. But there are many hundreds more, and worldwide there are probably millions now. Germany is the epicenter for this type of research. Governments are aware of the existence of these voices.
The 2 tracks which follow are recordings of the 7-inch vinyl release, which accompanied Raudive's book Breakthrough, published by Colin Smythe Limited in 1971. This is the first time they have appeared on compact disc.
The text spoken by the voices and the sound volume are exactly the same as in the original recording. To help the ear adapt itself to the strange rhythm, rapidity and softness of the voice entity's speech, each utterance is repeated several times. The voices here selected are grouped according to the persons addressed and their respective answers, followed by a translation and explanation. They are examples chosen to give the reader a breakthrough, an acoustic illustration of the material presented in the book. The listener is asked to read any text, spoken in languages he does not know, with particular attention, so that he may be able to grasp each separate word phonetically. Please note the commentary that goes with each voice text, as the meaning of some utterances can only be understood in context with the situation that gave rise to them.
The first voice is that of Margarete Petrowski, who had told the experimenter during her lifetime that she did not believe in an existence after death. After her passing, the experimenter asked her how she felt in the beyond, and a voice, identified as coming from Margarete, answered, "Bedenke, ich bin." German, imagine, I am. Again we hear Margarete Petrowski's voice, this time calling her former employer, Dr. Zenta Maurina. Zenta. Now the experimenter asks if Margarete can hear him, and a voice replies, "Kostja, ja." German, Kostja, yes. The voice then calls the experimenter's family name, Raudive, but shortens it to Raudive. And now we hear in Latvian and German, Koste, tu tik na. Koste, you are so near. Now the experimenter calls the Russian poet Vladimir Mayakovsky, and a voice answers, Mayakovsky. The experimenter tells the poet how difficult it is to convince people of the reality of the voice phenomenon, and in reply comes a statement which is typical for Mayakovsky's personality. Konstantin, pluj. In Russian, Konstantin, spit on it. The experimenter talks to his former teacher, the Spanish philosopher Ortega y Gasset, and a voice calls out, Ortega. The experimenter asks whether the research into the voice phenomenon had any significance and whether it was based on firm foundations. The voice answers, "Entrojas muchas cuestiones." Spanish, you will solve many questions. A Latvian voice then breaks in with a statement that could be interpreted in various ways. It might mean, for instance, that the voice phenomenon research may benefit mankind, even if the process is a painful one. laudis sadecina. Latvian, you are burning people. The experimenter addresses his former collaborator, the Swiss parapsychologist Professor Gebhard Frey. Beset by doubts, the experimenter begs Professor Frey to give his name, and a voice answers, Frey.
Frey. Frey. Frey.
Then, in Swedish and German, du sowas willst nicht glaube. You are sleeping. You do not want to believe. In another recording, the experimenter remarks that people do not believe in life after death, and a voice answers, So sind sie. German, that's how they are. The experimenter calls on Vitauts Simane, a friend who had died a short time before the recording was made, and receives the following answer. Danke, gute Morning. German and English. Thank you. Good morning. Then the friend gives his name, Vitauts Simane. After this comes a request. Prasicenta lai tala. Latvian and Swedish. Beg Zenta to speak. And then Musu Centa Recisos. Latvian. Our center is the producer. Lastly, this voice says, Sie glaubt nicht. German. She does not believe. Once again, the experimenter addresses Professor Gebhard Frey and asks whether he thinks the voice phenomenon research necessary and what, in the professor's opinion, its final goal should be. A voice replies, Oui, c'est nécessité. French and English. Yes, it's a necessity. The voice urges the experimenter. Konstantin, arbeiten. German, Konstantin, do work. The voice then calls Konstantin and lastly Raudive.
The following section deals with examples of voices grouped according to the various recording methods. In collaboration with technical experts, the experimenter has evolved 6 different methods of recording. A. Microphone. B. Radio frequency. C. Frequency transmitter. D. Diode. E. Goniometer. And F. Psychophone. The reader will find details about the various types in the appropriate section of Breakthrough.
Microphone voices. The experimenter states that in his opinion man cannot grasp the events after death with his intellect or even with his intuition. A voice replies in German, "Er kann." He can. At the end of a recording session, the experimenter says that he is tired. A voice comes in with "Bonne nacht." French and Swedish. Good night. A request by the experimenter that the voice entities should tell him from where they came is answered by a voice saying, "Seelisches Land." German, land of the soul. Radio frequency voices. Professor Loritz, who was a close friend of the experimenter, promised that he would manifest, if possible, after death. We hear a voice say, "Loritz, pienax klat." Latvian, Loritz will join. A female voice, probably Margarete Petrautsky's, says, "Eine Nottote." German and English, one who is not dead. Frequency transmitter voices. Koste, tu te tova mote. This is Latgalian. Koste, here is your mother. Tetu raksnieks padot maju. Latvian. You are the author here. Give me a house. Diode voices. The voice of an entity whom the experimenter does not know, but who calls herself Agnes, a helper, probably remarks here on unfavorable recording conditions. Agnes, furchtbar slickt. German and Latvian. Agnes, terribly bad. A voice, later identified as that of a man who lived and died in a place called Kirnbach in the Black Forest, Germany, says, "Wartet auf Walter von Kirnbach." German, "Wait for Walter from Kirnbach." A voice calls, "James Joyce." Now a voice, which may be Winston Churchill's, says, "Mark you, make believe, my dear, yes."
Make believe, my dear, yes. Demand to 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 make believe, my dear, yes.
Followed by Winston Churchill.
Churchill. Churchill. Churchill. Churchill.
The following sentence, heard at the end of a recording session, indicates that the voice entities have their own transmitting stations. What nun, gute Nacht von Zitadi. Russian and German. Now good night from Zitadi.
Goniometer voices. This recording method was developed by Theodor Rudolph, an electrical engineer specializing in high frequencies. He has himself recorded the following examples, which have been taken from a total of approximately 90 voice texts received by him. The voices have the same characteristic features as those recorded by other methods. It is interesting to note that the voices in these examples speak mainly Russian and Latvian, two languages unknown to Mr. Rudolph. German is used more rarely. The texts have been deciphered by the experimenter after Mr. Rudolph had verified the experimenter's name and some German words.
A Russian voice says, "On prosil bulku vo snie."
Он хотел булку во сне. Он хотел булку во сне. Он хотел булку во сне. Он хотел булку во сне.
He begged for bread in a dream. A statement referring to an acquaintance of the experimenter, whose name is Kan, and probably meaning that life lasts but a moment. Tu stunda, Kan. Latvian, you are but a moment, Kan.
Psychophone voices. This method was evolved by Franz Seidel, electrical engineer from Vienna. His apparatus has produced some very plainly audible voices. These bear the same typical traits as all other voices recorded by different methods. Again, Russian and Latvian are the main languages used, together with some German, though Mr. Seidel also does not speak either Russian or Latvian.
The word Flussigon, which is used in the following sentence, does not exist in the German language. It may be a corruption of the word fluidum, which means, in a symbolical sense, atmosphere or magnetism. The voice says, "Du hast kein Flussigon." German, you have no Flussigon. Now a Latvian voice. Tauta mosties. people awake? And in answer to a question as to who is speaking, a voice replies, Toti. Distorted German, the dead.
So, there we have it. This concludes the first part in a series of compact disc releases concerning paranormal acoustic phenomena. The second part in this series will present further archive recordings along with new research into the controversial field of electronic voice phenomena. This is Leif Elggren in Stockholm, April 1999.